What if I told you that changing how often you pay your drivers could be one of the cheapest, easiest driver retention tools you've never considered? Welcome to Driven for Success, the show that helps small trucking companies navigate payroll, driver retention, and other back office problems. I'm Mike Ritzema, and I've been working with trucking companies for the last 25 years. Today, we're going to talk about pay frequency and why it's more important than you might think it is. Most trucking companies pay every week to the driver, and that's great. Some still pay biweekly. A lot of non-trucking companies pay biweekly or even monthly. So why they do it, why trucking companies do it, is because they always have. Well, that might be something you could consider to change. You've probably done it because that was just the way the predecessor did it and the person before that. But the drivers, man, they might need that money now. And so they don't care if the bills are, you get paid on Friday when the bills are due on Wednesday. So it's hard. And so by making it just a little bit easier for them, you might find it easier to attract and retain drivers because cash flow affects everyone, not just drivers, but we're drivers are who we're talking about now. And it's personal. One of the things you could consider, and I've got a client who's done this, is pay the drivers twice a week instead of once a week. It could be a big difference for them. They could avoid NSF fees. They could avoid things like the paycheck advance people that are always really expensive. That would be such a win for them. So if you pay them twice a week, they're going to have that money sooner. They've already earned this money. They earned it when they drove the truck on that load. So, it's like they're having to carry a receivable from you and you're getting free financing for it, which is fine. And that's the way it's always worked. But if you can get them that money sooner, that's a way to make their lives so much better. So it matters too because it's expensive to be broke. And the cost of not having money is excessive. The NSF fees, the payday loans, the overdrafts, the credit card things, all of this stuff, it is really expensive in today's world not to have money. It would astound you if you look at it. 75% of people in the United States live paycheck to paycheck. That's a pretty universal number that we've all heard. So the drivers are certainly in that group. So if you can help them get paid sooner, they have a better chance of getting out of that mess by not having all the other fees for being poor or being broke. Now, I want to address what I would consider the most common argument because I brought this up on LinkedIn before too. I said, "Hey, what would you guys think about this thing?" And their answer was from some people. Again, it's not a scientific sample or any of that kind of stuff, but you know, I only get paid every week or every other week. The driver should learn to budget better. Well, that's fine. You can decide that your drivers just aren't good enough with money, but that's not really how it is. Yeah, maybe they should be better with their budgeting. Maybe they should change their spending habits, but that's not the part you can control. You can control how often they get paid. And if you pay them more often, man, that retention is going to go through the roof because if they're used to being paid twice a week, and then they start looking for another job, and that other job only pays them once a week, they're gonna be like, man, I don't know. That's like going from weekly to every other week. It's just a whole change in life. And I'll tell you too, the client that was paying twice a week, their retention was almost zero because who's going to leave them? I'm getting paid Tuesdays and Fridays. So, you really want to consider that because, just the driver retention part, whether you think they should have it or not, isn't really the issue. They've got their own problems. They've got a kid who needs something for school unexpectedly, or they've got, their house, their water heater went out or something like that. So if you decide that you want to pay twice a week, it does take some doing. You have to have your payroll process be pretty locked in how you have your cutoff dates and things like that. But it can work. But if you get that done, the results you're going to get are your retention's going to improve, your recruiting's going to get easier, your complaints are going to drop, and the amount you have to advance to drivers because you're advancing them every week. Just about if you've got more than 5 drivers, you're probably advancing somebody. those are going to drop too because they're not going to need it because they're getting paid the day after tomorrow at the worst. So you really make your life easier too. It's not just about the drivers. And I understand that your position of all drivers should be better at managing their money, but they're still calling you about it. So you're already involved. So you can make your own life easier. Now let's talk about some costs because there are costs to this, of course. One of the costs is the extra payroll processing. If you're using an external processor like us or any of whoever, you're going to pay twice as many times. I get that. I can tell you that we give you a discount for paying twice a week. So it's still more than paying once a week, but it's not twice as much. And I would imagine most every other payroll service does something very similar if you ask them. I don't think we're unique that way. The other part too is cash flow. Well, if you're going to pay earlier, you're going to have the money earlier to pay them, right? I would argue that you should just manage your money better. Like it's the same thing as the drivers. It's harder because it's more money and things like that, and you've gotten used to it much like the drivers had. But if you can get out in front of it, the money you're going to save in recruiting and retention, it's going to pay for itself. So it's really worth it, to at least look into it. Another option is we work with a company called Zayzoon, and they work with a lot of payroll companies. So again, I don't think we're unique there. I'm not trying to pretend like we're the only ones who do it. But Zayzoon has what's called earned wage access, and there are other companies like this too, where if we send them the data with you, the client's permission, then the drivers can just go get an advance on an app that it never touches you. And what that means is that if the driver gets the advance and then we take it, Zayzoon sends us the data and we take it out of their next check. That's kind of the story of how that works. But if the driver ends up, it was their last paycheck and there's nothing to deduct from, Zayzoon doesn't come to you guys and say, hey, you owe me that $100 for Bill Smith who bailed on us, took an advance on his last day or whatever. They don't do that. They eat it. They charge the driver $5 for the advance. They also have things like financial education and all these other things to try and get the drivers out of this hole. And they do it for people all across North America. It's really worthwhile. If you're a client of ours, talk to me about it. I'm sure we probably already talked already, but talk again. Let's keep talking about this thing because it's that important. And people like Zayzoon, there's another company called Rain, I believe, that does the same thing. They can get the money sooner. They've already earned it, so they should get it. It's something to consider. Another way to look at this too is a lot of retailers. I'm thinking quick serve restaurants and big box retail stores. Basically, will let their drivers so used to drivers, let their employees get paid pretty much every day. They'll advance them some money if they need it, which is similar to earned wage access. So this isn't just a goofy thing for trucking. This is something that's happening other places because more and more people are realizing, why do I work on Monday and I don't get paid for that until at least a week from Friday? Why am I fronting the company that I work for money? I did the work, I should get paid. So the same thing really applies here. Now, if you decide, if I've convinced you, and hopefully I have, if I've convinced you to do this, how do you get started? Well, I would start by making sure your payroll process internally is good, even if you're using an outside payroll service like us or anybody else. Make sure that you can get the data over pretty quickly. You're going to see it's smaller batches, so it'll be easier than a regular payroll run because you only have half the loads to process. So you just kind of get yourself into that flow, which, by the way, some of you are going to like, because getting payroll together can be, if you've got 30, 40 trucks or more, it could be a big job. So now at least you can turn it into 2 smaller jobs so you don't completely wreck your Wednesday or whatever day it is. Trying to just do payroll, you can do half of it on Monday and half on Wednesday or something like that. So make sure that process is good first. Secondly, talk to your drivers. Just be like, hey, what would you think if we started paying you Tuesdays and Fridays? Well, they'd be like, yeah, that'd be fantastic because, man, and you're going to hear stories about how you're bailing them out. They'd love it. And I'm telling you, you've got to be a little different to keep those good drivers. This is your way of doing it. And you'll stand out and they'll start recruiting for you. The next thing you got to do is you got to check with your payroll service to make sure, your payroll provider, whether it's internal, external, to make sure they can do it. And one of the things you want to make sure of is things like health insurance, if you're deducting health insurance or you have regular deductions, you got to make sure that you're timing that right, because some of the drivers won't turn in paperwork and in time to get paid twice a week. So you have to know, like, are we deducting health insurance on just the Friday payroll, or are we deducting it each time and we have to keep track of it? It's not that hard, but you just want to have a plan for things like that, because that's going to be the stuff that matters. You don't want to lose that in all of this payroll part. So, and just a quick plug, if your payroll service or payroll thing can't do it twice a week, give us a call. Of course, we can do that. We've done it for other people. Okay, end of shameless plug. But, you know, this can be a low-cost way to significantly improve your driver retention. And this isn't about being nice. I do think it is nice, but this is not why you're doing it. You're doing it for you. You're doing it to keep your drivers. You're doing it to make your payroll batches smaller. You're doing it to stop doing advances. That's what the win is for you. So the drivers will feel like they got a raise when they really didn't. Hey, if you're curious how much it would cost for your fleet, give us a shout. Go to truckingpayroll.com/price. You can get your price right there. We keep putting out fun videos about stuff like that. And if you're somebody who's getting value from this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it, review it, all that stuff. It's a new podcast, and we really need more people to like it, to get more people to see it, to help out small trucking companies just like you. Because I didn't see where there was a back office podcast for small trucking companies. And we talk about payroll more now, and I get that. That's my specialty. Once we get a few more episodes in, we're going to start bringing in guests that are going to talk about other things like insurance or factoring or driver recruiting, all of those things. We want to bring them in, but first we just got to get a few episodes under our belt. But those guys are coming soon. If there's something that you want us to cover, man, I'd love to hear about it. Comment on the socials, email me at askmike@truckingpayroll.com. Just hit me up, because we'd love to cover that. We want to make this valuable for you, because what you do is so hard, and we just want to make it a tiny bit easier for you. So thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week. Keep on trucking.